This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our critical issues call for today. Manufacturing 4.0 return on investment. What's the right formula? Okay, there I am. I'm your host. This is David Brosell, co-founder of the Manufacturing Leadership Council talking. I'll be your host and moderator for today's call. Let me show you our agenda for today. A pretty standard MLC agenda for our critical issues calls. I'll give some opening remarks about the topic under discussion today, and then we'll go into our panel discussion. We've got a great group of panelists to speak with you today. After the panel is finished, we'll do a Q&A with our panel. We'd like to hear your questions. We'd also like to hear your comments about how you may be dealing with return on investment models for M4.0 in your own companies. And then at the end, I'll give you some additional information about upcoming MLC events and activities. So let me move to our meeting format and how we're going to conduct the next hour. As I said, I'll be moderating this call today. Our audience consists of MLC members, NAM members, as well as invited guests. You're all invited to participate in this. You can use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen to put in questions or comments at any time during the hour. You don't have to wait until the Q&A at the end to do that, so please feel free to do so as you go along, as the questions occur to you based on the presentation. I may call on specific members of the group during our Q&A if necessary. I might have some questions of my own, and some of the MLC people may have questions as well. We're going to be recording this as we usually do, and it should be on the MLC website within 24 hours. As we go through the presentations, if you just want to look at the person speaking, if they're visible, you can do that by going to the top of your screen, and in the top view box, the Who's Talking button. If you press that, you should be able to go forward with just looking at whoever you want to. Let me see if I can continue to move these slides. Not moving. Leslie or Paul, could you move this next slide for me, please? Okay, here we are, virtual plant tours. Tomorrow, the MLC will be hosting a virtual plant tour at MXD in Chicago. The theme of the tour is the Flexible Factory, Lessons from the Nation's Digital Manufacturing Institute on Technology Integration. Next month, on December 9th, we'll be doing a virtual plant tour with Cooley Group. And the theme of that one is going to be From Legacy to Smart Tech, Leveraging Data to Make M4.0 Decisions. If you haven't registered for either of these tours, please do so. There's still time to register for the one tomorrow. It'll be kicking off at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Next slide, please. On Thursday, December 3rd, the Manufacturing Leadership Council will be holding its annual council meeting. This is akin to our shareholders meeting for all council members. During this meeting, which will run from 1 p.m. till about 4 p.m. Eastern Time, council members will get an annual report on MLC's activities and progress during 2020. It's been an incredible year. Discuss our critical issues agenda for 2021, and we'll be voting on that. So it's a very important meeting to attend, and deal with a number of other council issues during the afternoon. So if you haven't registered for that, you can do so using the URL on the screen. We encourage you as council members to attend this. As I said, it's a very important annual meeting for council members. This is where you have the opportunity to have your voice heard. We will also be hearing from new council members who will introduce themselves during the session. And finally, next slide, please, Paul. A reminder, the 2021 Manufacturing Leadership Awards Program is open. We're accepting nominations now. If you have participated in the program before and you have a project you want to nominate, please do so. If you haven't participated ever, check out the award categories and the process for doing so. It's a great opportunity for you to get recognition for your achievements, for your team, and for your company. So next, let's go to the next slide, please. Today's topic, M4.0 ROI, what's the right formula? MLC research indicates that measuring the return on investment of M4.0 projects continues to be a challenge for many manufacturing companies. 79% of respondents to a new MLC survey, results of which were published in October, say they are challenged with developing ROI models for M4.0 projects, with 37% saying there is a high level of challenge in doing so. In addition, 42% of the respondents also said there is a high level of challenge associated with assessing the cost benefit of advanced technologies, with 33% saying they don't invest in advanced technologies because they are not convinced of the payback. And so the questions we want to address today are, why are manufacturing companies having trouble devising ROI models around M4.0 projects and technologies? Are digital projects different than conventional projects, requiring a different type of ROI calculation? How best to devise ROI models for M4.0? And a number of related questions which our distinguished panel is going to be dealing with. So let me introduce our panel for today. I want to remind you, if you have any questions on this, on these presentations, please use the chat box at any time to record them. We'll get to them at the Q&A at the end. I'm very pleased to introduce our panel, Mike Guilfoyle, the Vice President of Consulting at ARC Advisory Group, a company we've worked with since the inception of MLC more than 12 years ago. Dennis Hogue, the Vice President and North American Division President for Next Year Automotive. Dennis is a longtime council member, has participated in many of these sessions before. And Iskander Yavar, the Principal and National Leader, Management Advisory Services, National Manufacturing Practice Leader at BDO, a council member. Pleased to have all three of you join us today for this important discussion. So let me hand the baton over to Mike from ARC, who will start our discussion with his thoughts about the topic. Mike?
Great, thanks, David. Appreciate it. Thanks to the Manufacturing Leadership Council for having me here today. So what we're going to talk about now is the common struggle when it comes to achieving and sustaining ROI for Industry 4.0, Manufacturing 4.0, digital transformation, whatever your company tends to label that transformation concept. So let me just take a moment to introduce ARC for those of you that might not be fully familiar with who we are. So we're known for our operational centric expertise, which really consists of the intersection of OT, ET, IIoT, and now IT as it migrates into operational processes. You can see our coverage by domain and industry. We don't, pardon me, don't rank or endorse. We also have a free to join user community, Digital Transformation Council. It has about 600 plus members that engage in peer sharing. And we've been at this for quite a while. We were founded in 1986. So here's a snapshot of some of our customers. We do cover process, discrete, and hybrid industries and provide services for technology end users, as well as those that deliver those technology solutions to them. Pardon me. So I guess let's start with what's going on. So why do so many companies struggle with ROI when it comes to transformation and change? So these were the same statistics that I think David had mentioned to start here. And it points out, why is there such a huge disconnect between the desire for ROI when it comes to transformation and the capacity to sustain it. And what's interesting here is if you look at these three statistics, there's one more element that is even notably worse. When you look at the capacity of companies to sustain success once they do invest, whether that's in some type of pilot or limited initiative, even when there's some measure of ROI achieved, the capacity of companies to sustain that success and to sustain that payback is even worse than the statistics you see here. But with that said, you know, in order to compete in modern industrial markets, it's imperative that you do transform. So you're caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment. So let's look at that disconnect between that desire and the reality. And it doesn't seem to matter whether a company takes a top-down approach or a bottom-up approach. The same very consistent pattern emerges. There are really three common related missteps that we see consistently. So the first is that there are too many possibilities without direction. And so companies get paralyzed because they can't figure out what to do, when to do it, where to do it, and how to do it. And that leads the organization to approach transformation as a pursuit of technology, because that's the only way they can wrap their head around it. All of this is underpinned by the elephant in the room. No one seems to want to take on the cultural barriers to change. And it's critical that you do so if you want to achieve ROI. The two go hand in hand. So then the next step of the pattern is frustrated by it. Organizations focus on defining a business need to justify transformation. And the defined business needs becomes the stepping off point for their initiatives. And it leads organizations to pour a ton of energy and time and resources in figuring out how to scale from this business needs starting point. And this is where we see a significant segment of the market stuck right now. And in my mind, the idea behind this is a very logical step to take, even though it's flawed. And I can see why a lot of companies get trapped in it. So the business need provides the definition of what's being transformed or changed. That in turn is intended to deliver a filter of sorts around use cases. So the organization can use that business need definition to then focus and determine the data, the processes, the people, the technology that are going to be involved. And then the output is this deployment process that takes a scalability approach a repeatability approach to scaling. So the idea is that if you can do it once, then you just look for more instances of that around the business. And I think that sounds logical and does seem to make a lot of sense. But here's what happens. Everyone starts out pretty excited, and then they encounter or foresee some type of organizational impediment. And when they do that, rather than deal with the organizational impediments, they simply avoid them. And in doing so, they construct these artificial limits on innovation and artificial limits on the return that innovation can provide. So what you're left with is something resembling incremental improvement, and it's not transformational change. So it's focused on the business need, but only a manageable approach to the business need. And this is where I see a lot of operational initiatives end up, and frankly, that's where they go to die. Because outside of a limited scale, ROI just isn't possible when this occurs. And then the executives look at this and they determine that the juice just isn't worth the squeeze. So let's talk now a little bit about how you break through this pretty ugly pattern and get better at figuring out ROI. So what I just worked you through are really symptoms of the actual problem behind why ROI is so difficult to achieve. And this image in front of you, if any of you have been to our forum before, you've probably seen it, but I call this the Viking longship of really, really hard work. And it's specific to digital transformation. And what it shows you is that success and ROI take time to figure out when it comes to transformation. And you can see that through the phases that are laid out here. And this one right in the middle, the ability to take things that you learn in a pilot and identify and transition them into core capabilities, that's really, really hard. You know, ROI for Industry 4.0, it requires the organization to accumulate what I call digital wisdom. And that's understanding where you need to learn and realizing it's not just a simple technology fix. It's really about applying new ways of thinking and data and applying those to customer needs and market signals so that you're responding at speed in a way your competition can't. And then as companies begin to get more comfortable with digital transformation, you then start to see that acceleration around the benefits in that blending and extending. Once you've accrued that digital wisdom I mentioned and fully integrated it into digital competencies in the organization, the return just starts to take off. So think about ROI this way. Transformation initiatives typically don't fit neatly into a company's established ROI and project justification methodologies and metrics, your traditional ways of thinking about things. And it's the conundrum of the innovator's dilemma. The innovator's dilemma is not new, but this is what we're dealing with. So you can see as demonstrated here, when inevitable market disruption occurs, it's really hard for established companies to figure out how to reinvent themselves through innovation. They're hardwired to rely on the things that have traditionally made them successful in markets. And as you note here, traditional and innovation approaches are trying to achieve two fundamentally different outcomes. And what's remarkable is if you look backward, the company graveyard is littered with examples of really successful, outstanding companies that were frankly doing everything, air quotes here, right, and they still failed. So let's look at this example here. I used Henry Ford, there's plenty of others. It demonstrates that the keys to traditional success aren't the keys to future success. So traditional success here is focused on a better horse, and the innovator is thinking about mass producing cars. Those are fundamentally different ways of approaching a problem. So the dilemma that confronts so many industrial companies now and their leadership in particular is that before innovational change can happen, its value has to be made apparent, or you're never going to make the move from the left to the right. And that's really challenging to do when there's no baseline to evaluate something that's new for your organization or your customers. And frankly, this is the root cause. This is at the heart of all the angst I hear around proving digital transformation ROI when it's something that's just being done for the very first time. So for industrial companies to successfully embrace transformation, they've got to figure out a way to value innovation. And that means you have to get access to new ideas and proof that they work. But that's not very easy either. So it requires you to expand your peer network. And I think this is absolutely crucial because you need to learn from others that have achieved what you're trying to do. And it can't be, you can't take the same lens that you've always taken. It can't be the same ecosystem you've always turned to, because if they had the ideas, you'd be using them by now. And then you have to understand that ROI, it's a journey. So what you need to learn in order to get that ROI will change. So you need a way to learn and then adjust as your learning needs change. I call that an agile approach to knowledge. And most importantly, this is the rubber meets the road phase here, which is you need to rethink your approach to incentivization so that there's a shared burden for success across the company when it comes to change. People simply follow what they're incentivized to do. And if change isn't framed within that incentivization structure, it's never going to happen. So I want to just, toward the end of this here, if you're struggling with ROI, there's something that you can do today to think things through a little differently. And that's what I want to put forward here. The thing you need to do is really rethink the questions that inform your transformation strategy. And I'm going to use an example around asset performance management because I think it's such a common starting point for industrial digital transformation initiatives. So the vast majority of companies today are focused on the efficiency and cost savings associated with moving from reactive ways of problem solving. In digital economies, the questions associated with that reactive problem solving about what needs to just be done, that's very reactive, and it really frankly isn't valuable. particularly when all those answers you're going to get to that question are going to be based on recency. So what's the last way you solved the problem? So for these companies, transformation, when they move away from operational reliability, transformation is about operational excellence. And before anybody starts throwing stones through the computer screen, don't get me wrong, initiatives for operational excellence are great in terms of efficiency and cost savings. But let's look at this problem and explore it to its natural conclusion. So think about the questions associated with the move from reliability to operational excellence. So the first step in this example is going to be something like, can I do it? So that would be, can I predict when an asset will fail? And you'll find out that yes, you can, and your people will find out it's not really all that hard once you work through the process. So folks will move on to the next question in the OpEx value chain, and that'll be asking something like, why did it happen? So that would be, what needs to change in my maintenance strategies to make them more effective? Here's the thing though, with this approach, the organization is focused on internal measures of success, such as comparing one plant's performance to another. And what that ends up doing is it really simply silos incentives around existing operational objectives. And so your competition, frankly, armed with the same type of data and with access to the same type of technology, can do the same thing. And maybe they can do it a little better than you. So ultimately what happens with this internal focus is you're going to hit a wall in the value provided. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the marketplace, you've commoditized your ability to compete. So sustainable ROI is never possible with that type of thinking. So what do innovation leaders do differently? They think about transformation. They think about I4.0, M4.0 in terms of competitive excellence. And in doing so, they're able to frame questions in terms of the value that change is worth to the company, and then they use that to drive change back into the business. So to complete this example, they ask questions about what would be required to achieve that value. In this instance, it becomes, what would it take to meet a customer production demand in a way my competitor can't? When you start to answer that question, it becomes much clearer what within the organization needs to change and why that change is important to the company. Then, as I mentioned, it's about getting access to new ideas about how to implement that change, which then truly transforms the company. So ultimately, what innovation leaders are after is speed and accuracy of response in terms of customer signals. And that's really the path to sustainable ROI. So if you want a little bit more information about expanding your peer network, which I do think is absolutely critical to transformation success, you can check out a white paper I penned on the topic. You can find it on the Vanguard page of AirC's website. Vanguard's our executive level guided service for implementing digital transformation strategies that actually work. Or you can, if you just want, hit me up via email, LinkedIn, or Twitter. So with that, I want to end here, and thanks again to MLC, and I'll turn it back over to David, our next presenter. Appreciate the time.
Thanks very much, Mike. That was a very good overview and a great way of thinking about how to put together ROI that works. And I love the analogy about the Viking longship. So let me move now to Next Year and our next presenter, Dennis Haig from Next Year. Dennis, very interested to hear what Next Year's approach on this is, kind of as a case study. So please take it away.
All right, thanks, David. And thanks to the council for allowing me to be here today. I just want to plug the council for one thing, that, our learning and is really about our involvement with the council. And that's really what kickstarted our M4.0 journey several years ago. And it's really been a great journey, and it's taken us much further than we ever expected to be. So I just want to briefly talk about our IT strategy, because it is a significant part of our M4.0 journey. But we view it as a global business process leadership. And we didn't start that way, but we've gotten that way over time and learned and believe that this is the right way to go. So there's business owners, and they're the ones that have the business process KPIs. They map their own processes. They define their improvement needs. They prioritize their improvements. And really, they're the ones that manage the total cost. The IT side is really around business process KPIs, objectives, needs, evaluating technology, applying the right technology to the business process needs, and align the IT services to the business objectives. And in conjunction with the business process owners, really efficiently manage the cost. So it's a cost about the overall IT structure and business along with the business process owners. So everybody keeps talking about convergence, and we started also converging a few years ago, combining OT and IT together. And we say it's the future, but that's where we're at today, and trying to get better at combining these two functions together, because you can't do it alone. And you see inside of those circles really the value and the work that goes on by combining IT and OT together. But the priority around this is this drives us to what the ROI becomes. Early on, we did ROI analysis on specific projects, but it really becomes this business process ownership and thinking about it as a business process more than just a single project itself. So a lot of people talk about convergence. You know, here's all the benefits of it, but it's duplication, minimize risk, really improves our performance. So we've seen that. You know, we can get to more data. We can get to better answers. We can monitor KPIs better. We do have better data. We have more reliable data. It has helped us significantly on cost reduction. It has helped us a lot on innovation, not only on the manufacturing side, but on the design side. And also, it really helps stakeholder satisfaction, both inside and outside the company. And even with our customers, you know, we've seen the value of going down this journey with our customers as well, because it improves our quality, improves our interaction with them, and really makes our business value to them that much better. So a key part of our business analysis of the opportunities, we created what we call an enterprise architectural council. And this is a combination of the business and application leaders. And you see in there the next line below is this business system. So there's business systems in each of the functions and even across the enterprise. And each of those have some very specific support needs, and they also have some combined needs. And so we use this architectural council to help us define what our strategy going forward needs to look like. Where should we apply the resources? Where should we apply the funding? How should we change our business as a result of what's happening around us? And, you know, it's difficult because everybody has their own priorities, but combining these people together who are, as again, these business process owners, they have helped prioritize projects within the company. And, you know, we've felt really good about what this has led to on the value of the projects that we've taken on. So, you know, Mike talked about, you know, typical ROIs, and we could always say that, yeah, you know, we want a 2-year minimum financial return. It's around business costs, always is around business costs, lead time, or does it improve safety or quality, grow the business, effectively manage our IT costs. It also has to be within the functional capital budget. And so we have budget set aside for this architectural council. And that's why it's so important that that group looks at what projects we have out there and determines where the spending opportunities needs to be. But it has to be around the strategic priority of the business process. It has to solve a business problem and makes people more efficient, provides better or faster data. And the key is getting approval through this architectural council. Ironically, though, a lot of our projects are not large ones anymore. They really are smaller ones. And we've taken the approach of starting small, failing fast. David talked about it. Mike talked about it. I think we all talk about that, and we look at these projects in each of these different categories, or combining these categories together, that how can we make a trial, make sure it works, and then using our global structure, roll that out globally, so that other people can take value of that change or that opportunity, or just an improvement in a process. And we've seen that when we launched the early days of the M4.0, that we had our own thinking about what the value really was. But once we got into it, we found the value was much greater than we even anticipated. And I think that's the key. I think we're short-sighted in some ways about what we think we can accomplish. And most of the time, when we get the data, when we modify the process, we see value and we obtain value much greater than what we even thought we were going to get from the beginning. So you can look at all of these different value criterias, but I think it's really the bigger picture you need to think about in the strategy. This is our digital trace strategy, and I'm not going to go through the circles themselves, but we've over time developed each of these modules and enhanced them, whether it be in small projects or large projects. And as we go forward with what we do for projects, we focus inside of each of these modules to look at where can we add more benefit to the business, where is it best that we spend our valuable money at and our resources. And we found that our staffing really dictates the priorities around what we can do. And so based on that staffing, more than it is the capital that's behind it, that's how we decide where we spend our time and spend our resources. And again, start small, fail fast, try to move as quickly as we can, and then roll it out to the rest of the organization, to all of our 27 plants. And so when you look at inside of our manufacturing facility, and I apologize for the animation, so I'm going to quickly try to get through this so you can see the broader picture. But each of these modules then fit inside of our manufacturing system. And we use these modules and our support structures and also the software and the outside companies as our focus and where we spend the time and effort to enhance and improve. And I think that's been the best value to us, that we've started in certain areas, we've determined what the project modules have to be and where we think we're weak, and then starting out small and then failing if we have to fail, and then moving on and fixing the things and moving on and spreading it across the company. And I really believe that's where the value comes from. And always the return on our work has been much greater than what we believed in the very beginning. And to me, that's the value of the data. That's the value of harvesting that data and using it in a problem-solving way, not only in our manufacturing process, but in our technology and in our business processes now. We're seeing tremendous improvement in business process as well. So thanks for the time. I'll look forward to any questions later.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dennis. A very interesting perspective on this ROI question. I particularly want to come back during the Q&A and ask you about what you said, that you found the value in these projects much greater after you got into them than you had anticipated at the beginning. Why that might have been so. You mentioned data, but maybe we can go into it a little bit more later on. Now I'd like to pass the baton over to Iskander Yavar from BDO, who will give us his perspective and BDO's perspective on the ROI question. Iskander, the floor is yours.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that, and appreciate both Mike and Dennis's stories. Just a couple things I took away from them as I learned a little bit more, and things that I will reiterate to this team. Use cases are important, and I think Mike touched on that. The idea of crawl, walk, run. I think we'll have a little bit of an animated video to talk through what that means. Dennis talked about convergence. That's definitely a theme that's synonymous with how we present this topic to the marketplace. And then clarity through data. The power of data is critical. Everybody understands that that's the new currency that businesses trade in. So I can't reiterate that enough, and I appreciate those comments from those two speakers. I'm going to try and be efficient to not be duplicative in some of my presentation. So my name is Iskander Yavar, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to talk about how both automation and technology might bring opportunity to manufacturers in today's environment. And what an environment we're living in. Truly unprecedented times for our industry, our country, and our world. If you wish to contact me, that is where I can be found. I will say I'm a proud member of the Manufacturing Leadership Council and happy to be a board member for the NAM. So just jumping right in for a second. Let's spend some time working through why even consider the investment. And I would argue that there's really not a choice anymore. The convergence of technology and the social fabric of our world is pervasive. I have a 4-year-old niece now, and like many folks on the phone with kids, first words are usually something like mother or father, mommy, daddy. This niece of mine's first words was iPad, and that's just a symptom of the environment we are living in, and that's not limited to our society only. It's in the business world as well. As a matter of fact, we have an expectation more and more that we drive automation, technology, convenience, speed to market, understanding of customer sentiment more and more in the business world. And manufacturing is not immune. I would argue that manufacturing in many aspects can be ahead. It's the only industry I'm aware of that actually has named the digital transformation, the evolution of this technology, specifically around M4.0 or Industry 4.0. But value drivers include items that you've already heard about: boosting operational efficiency, diversifying your revenue base. There is a lot of opportunities, and we'll hit on some of those examples, to diversify how you sell and receive and recognize that revenue. Competitive differentiation is becoming more and more. Many of the surveys that we all have seen talk about non-traditional competitors entering our marketplace and what that means. Improved customer experience, and then I would argue that the air that we breathe, which is what supply chain felt like before, has truly become disrupted by the pandemic. It's not taken for granted anymore, and it's critical that we drive some automation in that space as well. If you think about the shifts in customer sentiment, and I talked about the pervasiveness of this digital technology throughout our world, you're seeing that manifested in things like e-commerce acceleration. I know everybody on the call can relate to the convenience that the e-commerce platforms allow us to have now, and that has compounding effects on how manufacturers and distribution companies react. Everybody's now on a fresh, direct, online consumer goods to your door model. And if you're not, you have to be. There's no way to compete without that. And what are the manufacturers doing to support that model? Contactless delivery operations and options. Because of the current environment that just catalyzed the ability to have that mechanism in place, contactless delivery is critical. Focused on spending less and saving more. Bulk buying, we saw some of the consumer behaviors in the past. This wave that we're in right now, considered the third wave of the pandemic, probably isn't going to have the shortages we saw in the past, but still really changed the way we think about customer sentiment, and then really driving better interactions with our customers. One of the things that an Industry 4.0 play allows us to have is greater data and accessibility to the sentiments of our customers. And if we can react with speed to those sentiments, we're able to retain them and drive stickiness with them to a greater ability. So thinking through a roadmap, it's really about defining your vision. When we first heard the terminology years and years ago about M4.0 or Industry 4.0, to many of my clients in the marketplace, it felt like Star Wars. We needed to do a total digital transformation of our business to actually feel the effects and get the results of what this type of initiative could yield. And clearly through learning and some of the speaking today, we understand that the ideas of developing a proof of concept around a specific area, whether it's top line growth, mitigating risk, improving profitability, and focusing on that proof of concept, that use case, and proving it through the value chain, is more important than trying to redefine an entire business overnight. And most of the work that we see happening is around this very sentiment. Understand a pain point, go after that pain point, prove that it works. That success in and of itself leads to the ability and the organizational appetite to do more of those types of improvements. If you think about emerging revenue models, and these are opportunities for manufacturers that are presented with some of this automation and technology, it's about creating subscription models or lending your products as a service and not just selling them outright. You heard some of these stories early on with General Electric's power by the hour and selling airline industries usage of the engines and not the engines outright. That was enabled through these technologies and the ability to, as Mike said, drive predictive maintenance and understand failure rates, ensuring uptime and ensuring that you have the ability to sell the marketplace a performance and a standard, a KPI, and that's what they need, not necessarily the asset itself. So one of the ideas that we tend to push more and more is with the products and services that you create, how are there ways to capitalize and optimize on other revenue models? Data is big here. There is an example I'd like to share with everybody around a traffic technology firm that has dominance and market share around the hardware that enables traffic technology for public safety vehicles. They provide preemption to ambulances, police cars, fire trucks, those that are in need of a green light, and traditionally had sold that hardware to cities, municipalities, and governments, and upgraded that hardware, touched their customers only when it was time to do an upgrade. Through some encouragement of a new owner, they realized that they were able to sell data on a platform in a cloud on Amazon Web Services to provide some compliance reporting to their customers that each of their customers was building on their own. And that became a new subscription-based fee for them, a new revenue model for them. It took the entire business really getting their head around that idea. What ended up happening is a small technology project to put that reporting in the cloud and provide a subscription service to their customers. So diversifying revenue models is huge in this environment. And all this technology that is much more affordable these days, we're not talking about the times of the past when only the largest companies could afford a new ERP system. These technologies are very accessible to all types and sizes of companies. This is about understanding where there's opportunity to use them and then coming up with a pragmatic plan to go after that. I would like to talk a little about investing in Industry 4.0 or Manufacturing 4.0. And this is that playbook that we push a lot, and it's around using these technologies across the board to align where they can enable solving a specific pain point or problem. And all of these technologies are very accessible and affordable to the marketplace. So, that's not a barrier to entry. And we encourage everybody to really understand, what's at their fingertips. I'd like to kind of encapsulate some of the stuff that Mike was talking about, and even Dennis, this idea of fail fast, of creating a use case, of being persistent with a video. So forgive me for this. It'll probably break up the monotony of my voice, and we'll talk through a little bit of what this means afterwards. So hopefully that helps resonate a little bit. I mean, that's some of the teachings that I've learned from my clients along the way as we really try and drive some of these industry 4.0 techniques in their business. This is not about a total transformation of a business overnight. It's about really understanding where there's opportunity and then making an attempt to improve it through some of these automation techniques and technologies that are available to us. It's against the traditional thinking that we've always had, which is you have to do it right. This is about understanding how you do it, how fast you can do it, and failing fast. So a little bit more about how Industry 4.0 can help. There's various areas where Industry 4.0 has focused. It's around connected systems and data, increasing visibility and transparency to your marketplace, helping transform your supply chain, which to me is a topic that's critical in today's world. We talk about automation and then detection in real time from a quality perspective, from a failure perspective. So where you can actually pinpoint the business pain in these areas, the suggestion is you really focus on driving that use case and getting to a successful end result to prove how these technologies can actually help the business. So what's the right strategy for you? A suggestion from BDO, come up with a roadmap for success. Really assess the maturity level and define some vision, figure out the capital investments as Dennis talked about, and then go through the pilot. I won't belabor this slide, but coming up with a pragmatic approach to going through one of these journeys, I think is critical. I did want to spend a little bit more time talking about our industry and the fact that we're talking about innovation and digital transformation. And we just wanted to share a little bit about the innovation that's happening in today's world given the pandemic. Right? In this case, this is about a company that had identified a need for some PPE that was of shortage during that early part of the pandemic between March and May. And Milliken and Company actually took it upon themselves, their traditional textile manufacturer, to reposition part of their production facilities to help drive PPE for the shortages that were there. It's something they didn't have to do. It's something that they did purposefully. I would argue to you that it really helped their brand and in their eyes of the customers, the sentiments that were expressed about Milliken. So that's huge. I will tell you that manufacturing, from my perspective, is an industry that has been born and bred through innovation in this country. And today's world and today's topic is just about how this Industry 4.0 evolution will help drive additional innovation. There's another story that I'd like to share that's really around something similar, right? This is a pharmaceutical company where there was a shortage in respiratory drugs in our country. Nephron Pharmaceuticals actually took it upon themselves to re-engage some of their production facilities to help with that shortage. Real-time innovation happening during a crisis over and over again. I think that's critical. That's something that's addressing the crisis and the pandemic that we have today. They were able to make that pivot in a concerted way, spurred by the times that we are living in. But I would argue that Industry 4.0 and Manufacturing 4.0 is not entirely different. New competitors are entering our space. We have technology firms who are getting into the automotive game. We have different competitors we're used to seeing. And it really behooves us as an industry to focus on how can we differentiate and employ some of these same technologies that these competitors are using to get ahead. And that's why I wanted to share these innovation stories. One more here is around something similar, right? How this company actually decided to pivot their manufacturing facilities to produce PPE and face shields. Real-time innovation happening as a result of an environment and a situation that none of us could control. But the companies that I demonstrated today actually took it upon themselves to make that pivot. The urgency of Industry 4.0, Manufacturing 4.0 isn't quite the same as the pandemic. But the opportunity to differentiate ourselves as manufacturers and understand how to use these technologies to get ahead, I think, is just as important. With that, David, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Iskander. I love the video. It was very, very touching. We are now going into our Q&A portion of the session. If you have a question or a comment, please put it in the chat box. I think we can also open up for questions live. Can we do that, Leslie? Paul?
I think Leslie will probably be working on that now, David. We do have one question. I don't know if you're able to see that from Jim Freena.
And the question from Jim is directed to Dennis. Dennis, the question is, was Nextier able to exceed the anticipated results because you found other uses and insights from data collected during smaller projects?
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks, Jim. So that's part of the answer, that we went in with a certain goal in mind and we accomplished it, but there were some exterior things and some other factors around it that we were able to also help fix at the same time. So maybe we were short-sighted in what the value was, but we really did expand what the value is because of other factors around it that we were able to fix at the same time. And we found that all along. When we started the Trace project, we were genealogy at the time. And what we thought was a 1-year payback was about a 1-month payback. And then after that, it just kind of expanded from there because people got confident about what the value of the projects and the data was.
Okay, thank you very much, Dennis. We had another question that came in through the chat function from Stephen Moskowitz. I'll ask it for you, Steve, since it's visible here. One thing that the panel mentioned a few times is the impact of M4.0 and M4.0 projects on employee engagement. How do you measure the value of employee engagement as part of these ROI models? Why don't we start with Michael on that one? Mike, any perspective on that?
Sure. I'm a huge believer that transformation begins with people, and by engaging them very early in the process and upfront, you get a much better chance to help them understand what's the value of what you're trying to do and where do they fit within that, because people want to understand where they're valued. I also think that what it helps them understand, I think Dennis hit on this, is when you're engaged in a project and you have people that understand what value you're trying to achieve and they understand their role in that process, as you start to look for more ways that value can be achieved, you're empowering them to do what they want to do, which is contribute to the business. And they're going to find new things that you hadn't thought of. They're going to be able to bring improvements in front of you that you didn't expect. And so that's one aspect. And the other thing I think that we have to get over is this tendency to think about people who are not digitally evolved as problems. So a lot of good work I've seen is around the idea of establishing personas, looking at your workforce in terms of their capacity to be comfortable with digital innovation, and aligning their training and their education and their goals and their careers with their ability to work within that framework effectively.
Very important to bring people along, and you're absolutely correct. Dennis, what's your experience at Nextier with this, the importance or how you value team member employee engagement as part of these projects?
Right. Early on, I would say people were afraid of the data, or afraid of what it was going to mean. But right now, I think one easy way to measure it is all the requests for projects, all the requests for use of tools, and all the additional dashboards that people are creating because we're using common tools inside the company. And man, there's dashboards everywhere, but not just on the manufacturing floor, it's in the business process side as well. So to me, it's an explosion of desire is a good measure of employee engagement and ownership.
Yeah, very interesting. Iskander, any viewpoint on this one?
Yeah, just maybe two things to add. One, there's a fear as we introduce innovation and technology that we're going to replace people with robots. I haven't seen that to be the case consistently. So as we drive through some of these use case proof of concept projects that both Michael and Dennis have talked about, it's not like there's a mass layoff involved in this process. It's actually more opportunity for insight and accessibility to data for people to do higher value functions and really help the organization. So I think that's a misnomer that we also have to put aside. The other point I wanted to make, David, is the new generations that are coming into the workforce, the folks that are going to take, succession of these companies to the next level and ensure that most of these companies are around 100 years from now, expect a level of digital sophistication in the environments they're coming into. So there's actually a talent gap if we're not moving in that direction based on that expectation.
Yeah, well said. We talk about that here at MLC as digital acumen. That you really have to have digital acumen in your leadership teams and certainly digital literacy in your workforce and move everybody forward on this. Okay, let's see if we have any more questions in the chat function. I do not, but are there any council members on the call that would like to ask a question live? Can we facilitate that, Leslie? Anything at all? Not hearing it. I have a question of my own I'd like to ask the panel. When a project, an M4.0 project doesn't meet expected ROI, what are the common causes of that? Could you each maybe weigh in on that? Mike, you want to start?
Sure, and there's a million reasons. So
Just
many.
3 or 4 of the top ones.
Yes,
Please.
so many of them do fail. I actually think it's there's a disconnect between the strategic process and the tactical execution, because transformation is the most strategic thing that is done at the most tactical level. So usually if there's not I think Skander had mentioned here, you need to assess your organization and its capacity for change before you try to make people change, because it just won't work. And that's something I see over and over again, where the strategy doesn't inform the tactics and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned in your presentation that the culture is a very important part of this. Dennis, what's your take on the question?
I'd probably say 3. One, maybe we tried to bite off too much, which that happened early on. We've gotten smarter about that. I think the other was misunderstand the business need. Going into it, really didn't understand the problem that you were trying to solve. And then probably the third one was just taking a wrong approach. But again, that's why you want to start small.
Right. Iskander, any view on this?
Yeah, just a little bit. And with like any other change that we embark upon, I think change management is critical. The technology that we're talking about, it's going to do what it does. It's actually designed well, and we'll take the input and produce the output. And it's only as smart as we make it. To me, that's not the limiting factor here. It comes down to the same old thing, David. It's people, change management, and sustainability. And creating new muscle memory is a hard thing to do with the human being, right? That's why we all have the jobs that we have. But I would argue that will probably never change, that challenge. And we have to really work hard at understanding what enables those people to behave in a different way and take advantage of the automations that M4.0 provides them.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we're going to have to kind of wrap it up now. We are at the top of the hour. I want to respect everybody's time. And if I can move to the next slide here. Or Leslie or Paul, here we go. I'm going too fast. Okay. Our next critical issues discussion is going to be our annual beginning of the year discussion about what manufacturer is going to look like in the year ahead. Obviously, we've had an unbelievably unprecedented 2020, everybody's looking forward to what 2021 will bring and what kind of visibility we're going to have on the state of manufacturing, economically, technologically, from a leadership point of view, workforce trends, et cetera. We'll be addressing these on January 12th. So stay tuned for that. We'll be providing information to you all about who will be on that panel on January 12th. So I want to thank our panel for today's discussion. Dennis Guilfoyle from ARC Advisory, Dennis Hogue from Nextier, and Iskander Yavar from BDO for their insights about ROI on M4.0 projects. I'm sure this is a topic we will be revisiting next year as well, because people will continue to have questions about it and continue to try to improve how they are actually devising their ROI models. So I'm David Brosell from the Manufacturing Leadership Council. Thank you for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you on a future MLC webinar. Have a great day and a great Thanksgiving.